The governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and it's the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board is now meeting in regular session. Please join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have the roll call, please?
Here.
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 Here. Here.
We have an amended agenda. Looking for a motion to approve the amended agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the amended agenda. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have a proclamation tonight. We're going to declare 2018 Emergency Medical Services Week. And
It should be page 1 in your packet.
page 1? Yeah, I got it right here. So do we need a motion? Oh, okay.
We have guests.
Well, I'd like to welcome our guest tonight. Come on up and introduce yourself. Thank you.
My little spiel. Good evening, County Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Tim Lewis. I'm a supervisor with Medics Ambulance Service. Medics Ambulance has been providing pre-hospital emergency services in the state of Oregon since 1975, making this our 43rd year serving the residents and visitors of Clatsop County. Emergency medical service partners include paramedics, EMTs, firefighters, police, emergency room staff, flight nurses, flight paramedics. Our goal is to meet the emergency needs of our community in a compassionate, timely, and professional manner. I'm personally honored that you have entrusted Medics Ambulance Service with your community, and the company feels privileged that our citizens and visitors have entrusted us with the emergency care. We strive daily to maintain the trust we have earned. As the proclamation states, the EMS Week is May 20th through 26th with the theme EMS Strong, Strong Together. The proclamation before the Board of Commissioners is important to the EMS teams, EMS workers in the area. This includes dedicated volunteer firefighters, EMTs, and together we work to emulate this theme. On behalf of the workers of Clatsop County, thank you for the proclamation and your continued support of emergency medical services. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for your service, and thank you for the important work you do.
We do have a little plaque that we're supposed to make.
All right. Any questions for our presenter? Comments?
Thank you.
Can you read what the plaque is? I'd be interested in hearing.
This is a Medics Ambulance Service recognizes Clatsop County Board of Commissioners for its continued support of emergency medical service personnel in Clatsop County. National EMS Week, May 20 through 26, 2018.
Well, thank you very much. It's very kind of you.
Now I look for a motion to proclaim the week of May 2026, 2018 as Emergency Medical Services Week.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and second to proclaim the week of May 20th through 26, 2018 Emergency Medical Services Week. Any further comments? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I'll now read the proclamation. Emergency medical services is a vital public service, and the members of emergency medical service teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. The medical emergency services system consists of emergency physicians, emergency nurses, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, firefighters, educators, administrators, and others. The members of Oregon's emergency medical service teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. It is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of emergency medical service providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week. The Board of County Commissioners of Clatsop County, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 20th, 26, 2018 as Emergency Medical Services Week. With the theme EMS Strong, Stronger Together, I encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next presentation tonight is the third quarter financials. Come on up and may I have the staff report, please?
Good evening, Commissioners. So it's that time of year again. If I go through this too quickly, just let me know. This is our third quarter financials. We're now actually a little bit further into our fourth quarter than I would like to be before giving you this. But as far as the third quarter, funds expenditures continue to remain generally in line with the budgeted expectations, and we continue to monitor anything that seems off course, and we're watching it closely this time of year so that we can do any budget adjustments if necessary, and moving things around from where we can realize savings rather than using the contingency. The budgeted amount of property taxes collected at the end of the third quarter, we were at 98.6 collected of the budgeted amount. So this here is for all funds revenues collected. And this does not include transfers, and you'll notice that we are at 89.1% collected of the budgeted amount. This has a lot to do with the fact that we have received our timber revenues at a higher amount than anticipated, and so by the end of the third quarter, we were at 100% collected. This next slide here represents the general fund revenue collections. Again, this excludes any transfers that we have, and we are coming in higher than usual as well. And this has a large part due to revenues such as property taxes, room taxes, marijuana taxes, and franchise fees that have come in higher than anticipated. We did not budget for any marijuana tax, and we have been receiving some. As far as the general fund major revenue, as you can see for the timber revenues in both amounts, we are 100% collected, as I said, and then as stated earlier, we were at 98.6% collected for property taxes. And so we anticipate, coming in, if not at 100% right there for the total property taxes collected by the end of the fourth quarter.
We're gonna see some more, we're gonna exceed our budget estimate on timber, aren't we, because of the fourth quarter?
This is the third quarter.
Right.
So the fourth quarter will be in excess of what we've collected, yes.
Gotcha.
And I will, that'll be in July when we bring that forward. So this slide is representative of the payroll expenses for general fund only through the third quarter. And we are at 71.5% expended, and we should be around 75%. This does not mean that every fund is below, so some are running a little bit higher, some are running a little bit lower, and that brings us to that 71.5%. We are coming in about $842,000 more than the previous year, and this is a result of the additional 4.72 FTE that were added in the general fund this year, as well as increased healthcare costs and increased PERS rate costs. So as a result of the last meeting, I was asked to add numbers, and so this slide is a little bit smushed because I need to leave the percentages, because you'll notice that right there, the BOPTA property tax appeals, it's below 75%. But it's only at 19,545 expended. Well, you have down at the jail nurse, they're not quite 50% expended, but they're at 199,414. So the percentage expended is dependent on the size of the budget. So, but for the most part, as you can see, most of these org units within the general fund are below that 75% mark. Again, the transfers, that's because as of the third quarter, we had received all of the timber revenues, and so we were above the 75% mark, but we will not transfer more than the budgeted amount. And then additionally, under the county tourism, we are above the 75% mark, but we have expended all of those funds for this fiscal year, so there won't be any more funds expended from there.
Those numbers help, thank you.
Yes. This slide here represents the Board of Commissioners org unit, and as of this time, 71,102 had been spent, and that is 78% of the 75% mark. This slide represents the breakdown by commissioners for expenses in education and travel, meals, mileage, rental car fuel charges, parking, and lodging. And the amount that was budgeted was $17,500, and through the third quarter, only $10,300 had been spent, so it's only at 59% of the amount budgeted.
How much did you say?
59%? Yeah,
budgeted.
10,300 had been spent of the 17,500.
And 75, okay, well, that's good.
This slide here, I was able to put both the percentage and the amount because it's a little more spread out. So this is for the public health department. And again, as you can see, for the most part, everybody's coming in below that 75% mark. The Babies First is coming in above, but if you'll look at maternal, child and health, or maternal and child health, that's coming in below. And this is because of a shifting of program changes. And so the state is kind of, I don't want to say doing away with maternal and child, but they're just kind of including it in with the Babies First stuff. So it's kind of a shifting of names, I suppose. And then you can also see that the household hazardous waste, we are continuing to move things along on that. You'll also see a budget or an agenda item coming before you tonight that will continue to move that process along. This slide here represents the roads department. Everything here is coming in line. The road maintenance and construction is slightly below, and they are starting to pick up their process with the spring weather and coming into summertime. So those expenses will continue to grow in the fourth quarter. The road district is above, but again, that's in relation to the amount that gets transferred, and they will only transfer up to the budgeted amount. The equipment replacement, they have purchased all but one piece of equipment, and that will be getting purchased here shortly. Oops, I went too far. Okay, so this is the remainder of all the funds. And again, I couldn't include everything because it just gets too smushed, but for the most part, everything is coming in as budgeted. There's the mental health org unit, which is coming in a little bit higher, and that's because of pass-through money. So we may be bringing a budget adjustment for unanticipated grant revenue before you guys. And the county clerk records is running above, but they have completed all of their archiving projects for the year, and so there shouldn't be much more in additional expenses there. So as stated previously, the org units are coming in as anticipated, and those that are coming in higher, we're monitoring. And again, we're going to try to realize savings someplace else rather than having to take contingency, but that's not to say that contingency might not have to be used. Are there any questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Yes.
You're doing an excellent job. I just wanted to tell you that. I didn't get a
Thank
chance
you.
to tell you that at the end of the meeting yesterday. You really are just really zeroing in on the things that need to be informed the board, and I think I just wanted to give you a shout out for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Thanks.
Commissioners, have any questions or comments? Okay.
Okay, thanks a
Carol,
lot.
thank you
I
for that report.
appreciate seeing the numbers as well.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. This is time for business of the public. I don't have any comment cards. Is there any business from the public tonight? Does anybody want to fill out a comment? Okay, seeing no business from the public, I look for a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now we're going to move on to a public hearing. This is a continuation of public hearing on ordinance 18-03, adopting revised FEMA maps.
Good evening, Gail Hendrickson, Community Development Director.
Is there any additional information from staff?
Yes, at the last meeting, there were several questions that were posed by the commission members. One related to a legal opinion from County Land Use Council. I only received this evening after 5 o'clock, but his summary points out 3 areas that would have significant impacts on county residents. The first is that affected properties would not, if we opt out of the program, the National Flood Insurance Program, affected properties would not be able to obtain federal flood insurance. Private insurance might be available, but it is likely to be much more expensive. Number two, banks would not be able to loan money against the property for either acquisition or construction. And three, the county would then no longer qualify for any federal disaster assistance from any flooding event in those areas. So those would be the consequences of dropping out of that program. There was also a question about whether or not people with flood insurance or people without flood insurance can get any assistance from FEMA following a disaster. As we've just learned, if we opt out of the program, there will be no FEMA assistance for anyone. If we are in the program, there are SBA loans, Small Business Administration loans, and there are also FEMA grants that can be used for people who do not have flood insurance. However, if you do have flood insurance, you can utilize that, possibly getting more money, and also you can use it even if there is not a presidentially declared disaster. There was a question, let's see, about how many policyholders are in Clatsop County. As of December 2017, there are 498 policies in the unincorporated area. Those total insurance that's in place is $135,853,746.
Wait, will you just do that a little slower?
Yeah, so of those 498 policies, the total insurance that they carry is $135,853,746. To date, since 1978, the total amount of losses that have been paid in the unincorporated areas is $1,549,746. There was also a question about the permit cost, and so I did meet with the county manager and the budget and finance director this week, and we would like to propose a $50 permitting fee, which would include what is typically an $84 development fee and $111 flood permit fee, and we would like to combine those and offer it to people for those structures that are currently exempt, and we would offer that for $50. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
So when you, does that fee schedule need to be going through the board, right?
Yes, if,
Present it to us at a later time.
right.
Yeah, no, you
Yes.
can't take action on that.
Of course not, yeah, okay, that's interesting. Is there any questions, do you have any questions for staff?
I didn't get the very last part of what you said, something about $50. Wasn't tracking that. What?
Okay, so right now, we exempt these certain activities from having to get any type of permits, and that permitting would typically be an $84 development permit, and then for any construction in the floodplain, it's a $111 floodplain permit.
Okay.
So combined, that's $195. We would like to combine those two, offer it for $50 as a combined service, since right now they don't pay anything. And we realize that they are going to incur some engineering costs now, but we can offer them a reduced permit fee from, instead of the $195, we would offer both for $50.
Oh, I see, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's also being responsive to concerns the public had, is it
Yes.
not? Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Could I just ask, generally speaking, the fees are carefully calculated to recover staff time. Is this a loss leader for the benefit of community? Is that it?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way to, I don't want to burden you with paperwork, but is there a way to calculate that as you're going along, just so we can, or do you have a general sense? You know what I mean? I don't want to overburden you, but I don't want to overburden people who are trying to just live their lives.
Right, I understand. Right now, we contract with Crest to do the review of the floodplain permits. The person who reviews them is $60 an hour. So even for an hour's worth of work upfront, we will lose immediately $10 on the proposition. But typically, her reviews For the more simple project, the simpler projects, I would say are probably not more than an hour at most.
Okay,
Yeah,
just so we're tracking the impact of federal requirements.
Yeah, I think one of the other difficulties in terms of understanding the overall budget impact of this is we don't know how many of these permits we may or may not get. Obviously, if we get a lot of them, we'll lose more money. If we only get a few, we'll lose a little bit of money. But I don't think there's any way for us to know how many of them we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wondering.
So, seeing no more comments or questions from the board, is there any public testimony? If you wish to testify, come forward. No one's going to testify, okay. I will now close the public hearing,
Thank you.
and I would entertain a motion.
Chair Lee, I move to approve ordinance 18-03, adopting the national flood insurance rate maps dated June 20th, 2018, and flood insurance study number 41007 CV001B and number 41007 CV002B, revised June 20th, 2018, version number 2.3.2.0 for unincorporated areas of Clatsop County and amending the Clatsop County Land and Water Development and Use Ordinance, Section 4.000, Flood Hazard Overlay.
Second it.
We have a motion, a second, to approve ordinance 18-03, adopting the national flood insurance rate maps dated June 20th, 2018. And that's as far as I'm going to take the recital of that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Chair Lee, second reading.
Oh, we have the second reading by title only.
Yes. An ordinance adopting legislative text amendments to the Land and Water Development and Use Ordinance 80-14, Section 4.000, Flood Hazard Overlay. Adopting a revised FEMA flood insurance rate map panels for Clatsop County, Oregon, dated June 20th, 2018, and adopting the revised flood insurance study number 41007 CV001B and number 41007 CV002B, revised June 20th, 2018, version number 2.3.2.0 for unincorporated areas of Clatsop County.
Thank you for that reading, County Manager. Okay, our next item, we're moving on to the business agenda. Our first item on the business agenda is considering an offer on county-owned property, page 63. May I have the staff report, please?
Hello, Commissioners. Suzanne Johnson, the assessor. I am bringing before you an offer on county property. We received this county property in our foreclosure last fall, and we've offered it for sale at our March public auction and had no bids. And so your current policy allows for a sealed bid to be presented that is no less than 80% of the original minimum bid. This bid does meet that criteria, and in your packet you have the wrong earnest money agreement that should show $40,000, and in fact, according to his correct, and I could pass these out if you would like to have a copy of this, his bid is $62,000 and a penny.
And you have that correct on your staff report.
So there's a typo here on this, on the agenda summary, or?
There's not a typo in the agenda, I just have it incorrect to make two earnest money agreements at the same time, and the wrong one was included in your packet. So the other one, I made a mistake, the other one was $30,000, that's what you should see in your packet, when in fact he did make a bid for $62,000, one penny. So now, since the bid is sufficient by your policy, we would just ask you to decide whether you want to accept this offer.
And that was the only sealed bid we had for that property.
That's
How long
correct.
was it up for auction? For just the regular time? We tried to
Well,
sell it? Sorry.
we offered it for public auction. So we entertained bids at a public auction here in March, and no one asked for it too.
It looks like it's a buildable lot.
It has a single-wide mobile home on it. It's unfortunately that it's been broken into, and we had to call the police, and so there's a criminal case pending on this. It's kind of attractive, apparently.
And have we had our property on auction before?
This property, no.
How long has it been in our possession?
Just since the fall, when we foreclosed on it for non-payment of taxes.
So we're looking at, our minimum bid was 75,000 cash, and our offers, it's assessed at 60,000. And we have an offer here of the 62,000?
No, it's assessed at,
83 is what it's assessed at.
That was the mistake that you were addressing.
No.
Oh,
I was addressing that included in your packet was the incorrect earnest money agreement that reflected 30,000 on a property that it's totally separate property.
The one that's in there said 38,000.
oh, okay. So I'm looking here on page 63 of this ended agenda summary. It says staff received a sealed bid of 62. That's what's here on this.
Yes.
Okay.
And what was in our packet was this.
Oh, okay, very good. I see that. Thank you, Commissioner.
I'm sorry for the confusion.
No, that's okay. I just, well, I think I'd be curious to see what other commissioners have to say about this. We're kind of zeroed in on the assessed values on this. So does any of the commissioners have any concerns, or sound like a good deal to them?
what happens if this doesn't get accepted?
Then the policy says that if we don't, if we don't receive a bid that's sufficient, which this one is sufficient, then we have to wait a year before we would recategorize it. But during that time, we can accept any other sealed bid. So that's what we can do. We can accept any other sealed bid, and we can bring those forward to you. We can also, and Heather, you might have to help me with this, but we probably would just put it on another public auction, the next one that we have, and try and get, say we want more for this. And it's not going to stop the same person from coming back and
Trashing the
bidding.
place.
No, bidding higher, I hope that person, I hope the police are taking care of the trasher. And that person wasn't trashing the place, they just were looking for a place to live.
Interesting. Well, since its assessed value is 60,000 and we have an offer of 62,
No, the assessed value is 83,000.
The assessed value is 83. But just to remind you of the process, when we,
wait a minute.
okay,
The current real market value
real
of this
market.
parcel is 83,000.
Okay.
The county's assessed value is 60,000.
okay.
It's-
Let me
it's right
explain this to you.
Oh.
See, it's there. That confused me at first too, but now
Okay.
I'm clear.
I would like to explain that to you, though. Real market is real market, arm's length transaction, that's what we think it's worth. Assessed value is the lesser between the maximum assessed value and the real market value. So it's an administrative number. It has to do with Measure 50 and the whole calculation of Measure 50. So we go by real market because that's what we would expect to receive in an open market at an arm's length transaction. And our process in the policy is to get together, categorize the property first, and then we actually sit down and look at sales of comparable properties and come up with the minimum bid that we think would start a healthy bidding process.
So what is the disadvantage of waiting and trying again to get a higher bid?
There is, I was going to say there is none, but the only thing is that we're continue to have the liability of having a structure.
Is this mobile home, it's not, the mobile home's really not worth anything, is it?
Right.
It's just basically property without.
That's correct.
Does it have septic and electricity hookup and that's all there and
It
everything?
does. I don't know what requirements planning and zoning would require if they were going to remove a single wide and put something there. Just,
My question is the mobile rural home doesn't really have any value at all?
Well, except to a homeless person.
yeah.
I mean,
it depends on what you're calling value.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do, and I know this was touched on, but whenever the county does own property, depending on where it is, we may incur significant liability. It's a lot more problematic if there's something like a dwelling on it. Because someone will find it.
Right.
Someone will be in there, and we don't always know what they might do when they're in there. We even have, at least a couple times a year, and I think we got one resolved, but we have people that squat on county open land. And at least a couple times a year, I know I just sent a letter over to the Warrenton Police saying this is in fact county land, this person doesn't have the permission to be there, and that gives, law enforcement the ability to go and say, you can't put your camp here.
Gotcha.
But that problem becomes even more acute when there's a structure because it's just more attractive to people.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm leaning to Ernst to go ahead and accept the offer.
Probably off, any off. It's fairly close, so,
Excuse me?
fairly close.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, Chair Lee,
yeah,
I'd like to make a motion.
please.
I move to adopt the resolution in order and authorize the chair to sign the deed.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution order authorize the chair to sign the deed. Seeing no further deliberations, all those in favor? Aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
for that staff report. Oh, boy. Okay, next up is the Household Hazardous Waste Facility Design Build Guaranteed Maximum Price. Mr. McNichol.
That's a whole lot of words right there. Hi, I'm Mike McNichol, Director of Public Health, and
David Diefenbach, Capital Projects Manager.
so you see in front of you in the board packet, we outlined everything about the Household Hazardous Waste Project. As we discussed yesterday, a little bit was that this is a long-term process that started way before I started here, and it's one of those things that we were trying to finish up quickly when Cameron got here, so we're trying to, if we're going to have a project, we should make it go. If we're not, then we don't. So we wanted to bring this along, and right now we're at a point where we have the bid in from Haligso Construction for the build and design and the permitting, which will include all of the groundwork, and that's really where the expense is with the building and the permitting. So I did provide you with some frequently asked questions. It's your packet. I handed out, Teresa handed out to you. Kind of outlined some of the questions that we've had recently about the costs, where the revenues are coming from. I've also included, there was a question about who might be the contractors that actually do the events. And I've attached that to the second, and behind your first one that's about Clean Harbors. It talks all about them. They can do a better job than I can to tell you who they are. And then the next page on that is, there were some questions about what is actually household hazardous waste. And that page looks like this, has a red marking on it. And this is what Tillamook County's household hazardous waste facility takes. And so we would take all of those things. The only things they won't take, as you can see, is ammunition, explosives, medical waste. One thing we would work on is actually including sharps. And we would probably also work on taking prescription medications. So those two things that they don't do in Tillamook, we would actually work on trying to do. So that's the only exception. But you can see it's quite a long list of things that we would need to get out of our waste stream, and that's really what this is about, is trying to remove these things that shouldn't belong in the waste stream, get them out, get them properly treated and safely disposed of at a facility.
Any questions for staff?
Well, so I'm close to Cardam, and I go down to Manzanita and use Cardam. This is different than that, because Cardam has had problems maintaining its financial viability. And I wonder if you've looked at that at all, if it has any relevance at all to our experience that we can anticipate here in Clatsop County.
Is that the Tillamook facility?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Tillamook facility is actually a county-owned facility, and they actually have a solid waste program. It's a little bit designed differently. We actually are going to get money from the tipping, they call it a surcharge. For every ton of waste disposed from all of our facilities here, we get revenue from that at $3.50 per ton. That's actually where we're going to do the operation and maintenance and overlong pay for these things. We actually are asking Recology for some help, and as well the cities, we're going to go and increase that amount to $5 per ton, and that'll help make sure that we have long-term financial solubility for the program.
So you have a feasible market, I mean, you have a feasible plan here.
Yeah,
So it's better.
absolutely. This has been vetted for about 5 years or so. So we just finally got everything going in the right direction.
Seasoned, well-seasoned. and-
Well, it's very well seasoned, yes.
Thank you.
I understand that China is not accepting a lot of hazardous waste and whatnot. In the industry, what are they, how are they planning for that? Because that was isn't it a big market for the United States to send our waste materials to other countries? Is that a concern?
It's not from our operational standpoint. That's probably more a global issue that we really can't deal with. But the things on this list, a lot of these things are recycles. You can recycle used motor oil. You can recycle antifreeze. You can take batteries, undo them, and redo them. So the idea is to take most of this stuff and then reuse it. So like paint, they take the old paint, latex paint, put it in a mixer. You can go buy latex paint at a third of the cost of a place through the paint care. So that's the idea, is try to get these things reused and recycled and not just disposed of in China.
And you anticipate that the user fees will indeed cover this? It's going to be open, what, twice a month?
Yeah, so it'll be open once a month for residents who can come in for free, and you'll see the drawing there. It's a drive-through. They'll drive up, they'll open their back or their side or their trunk or whatever, and we'll have a person take out the materials, categorize them, and properly store them, and then they drive away with a little thing, thank you. And yes, so the fees we're going to collect from the revenue that we've been collecting for the last, I don't know how long time, those will in fact cover the cost. We've worked with Monica and we've run the numbers, and it looks like we'll be just fine.
So you're aiming for a 5-year payoff of the loan to build the place?
So we're looking for a 5-year loan payoff for the Brownsfield loan, yes, and the amount that we're asking for actually comes with a $60,000 loan forgiveness. So actually the amount that they're going to loan us is actually not the amount we have to pay back, so it's actually a good deal.
Because we've gone from 600,000 to 1.2 million to build this.
Well, and the problem with this first bid was they didn't do the work that was needed to be done underground. So, we are building on an old landfill. And when you have to build on an old landfill, the DEQ steps in and says, oh, by the way, you're going to have pilings driven to 60 feet underground to make it solid, and you're going to have methane mitigation to make sure your building doesn't explode. So those are the things that added a substantial cost to the $600,000, unfortunately.
But the Brownfield loan forgiveness amount of 60 kind of mitigated that a bit.
That's right. And the Brownfield loan is actually, because the DEQ is requiring that, we're using the money from that to pay off the DEQ's requirements.
So I'm sure you thought about different locations, but those didn't pan out for you.
And this was decided for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee years ago. They went through the entire county and found this one was actually cited, had the right zoning. It was near a Recology transfer station and was on a landfill, so it met all those requirements.
Right.
Very good.
And will this information go up on the website?
Absolutely.
So where will it be on the website? Will it be under public health, or will it have its own little?
So on our county website, Public Health has its own little clicky thing, and then under that's environmental health. So I'm going to add a solid waste program one, so we actually have a solid waste program, and then it'll have all that information. It'll look kind of like this with FAQs and all that information. We're also going to use our Facebook page because we have about 4,500 followers now in the county, so that's a great avenue. We'll also advertise through the Daily Historian will probably run a story, and then we're going to also work with Recology and the cities to make sure that we have flyers like this included in their monthly bills before the event so people will know when to come.
Because it depends on people showing up.
Oh, I don't think that'll be, we actually offer, right now, I get about 8 to 10 calls a week about people asking when we're going to have this thing built.
And so when do you expect to have it built?
The schedule shows us opening next January.
Okay.
There's a long process in permitting with DEQ.
And we started that process already, but it's, like a lot of things with the DEQ, it's painful.
So many times through the years, I have wished for a household hazardous waste facility where I could take things that I didn't feel good about just,
Throw them in the garbage.
yeah.
Yeah, so this is really going to be a great piece of, also, on the back of it, I did have a letter, Recology is apologizing, they were going to bring their, Dave Larmuth from Recology, who does their work with us, I've been working with him all this whole time, wanted to come and talk, but he had a previous engagement, but he did provide a letter of support for you to read about why they're so supportive of this as well.
I really appreciate this information you've brought to us today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
May I make a motion?
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
There's one item left off the motion, if I can give you an amended one. Just on our motion, it doesn't authorize us to apply for the loan, even though it's in the document.
Sounds kind of important.
Okay, so David, why don't you come on up here and just fill that in for Commissioner Nebaker so she can make the proper motion.
Oh, it's complete? Okay. I move to approve the design-build contract amendment with Helixo Construction Incorporated at the guaranteed maximum price of $1,054,045 and have Helixo Construction Incorporated complete the final design, permitting and construction of the household hazardous waste facility, authorize the county manager to sign the Phase 2 amendments, and authorize the county to apply for a loan from Business Oregon.
Second.
We have a motion and second to, hand me that, please.
He's got to read it.
As again here in this long motion, I'm not going to recite the entire motion. We have a motion and second to approve the design-build contract amendment with Helixo Construction at the guaranteed maximum price of $1,054,045, and have Helixo Construction Incorporated complete the final design permitting the construction of the household hazardous waste facility. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I have another thing to put on my refrigerator, right?
Our final item tonight is we're going to revisit the sale of county-owned property to seed the homeless fund. This came up a month ago, and again, I've talked to Mr. Evans, and he may have talked to some other commissioners, and I think this is a great idea, and I support it. And if there's any more comments or questions, did you have anything to add, County Manager Moore, about this item?
Well, the only thing I would add is it's sort of always been my intent, if you vote to go forward with this, I'd like to visit with the other taxing entities and see if they might be willing to, as we are doing, contribute our portion of the tax to this fund. I don't know if that'll be successful or not, but, I think we could really make this a community effort to try to address homelessness.
Absolutely.
So Chair Lee, during the budget deliberations yesterday, I mentioned the idea that because this is an emergent community need, if the board wishes to go forward rather than wait to sell land and collect it and take the proceeds and apply it, that we might act more immediately and basically loan money from cash reserves, which we then repay. And I wonder if anyone has considered that, if that's an attractive option, if that's possible for staff. I'm just curious about that.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. We're always, to address this very important issue, like you said, it's very important to the community. I think we should look at everything. And I think that staff should take notice of your comments and see maybe what other opportunities we have. I encourage you to explore that yourself and, move any of that information on to me or
That's all I have to say about it right now.
Okay,
Just to
yeah.
ask staff to investigate or to ask the board to, if it's our will that we borrow money from cash reserves, which we then replenish after we sell, just so that the transaction can go forward smoothly to deal with homelessness. And I don't know what the pleasure of the board is or if it's feasible for staff, but I just wanted to think about it a little while and consider an option that possibly would be quicker and easier.
Yeah, we'll definitely take a look at that. We can, in some cases, do what are called interfund transfers. In some cases, we can't. So we just want to look at it and make sure that, we're not doing anything that might get us in trouble down the road.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, because this is a situation, I agree with you completely, Commissioner Thompson, where, we gotta find little sacks of gold wherever we can. If there's any, I didn't entertain a motion unless anybody has any comments or questions.
I have some comments.
Please.
Thank you. Yes, we did talk about this a month ago. I do see that the motion is, the staff report doesn't really even mention that we had talked about it a month ago. The way it's written, it's not clear how much money would be going into this homelessness fund. And I am not aware that we have a homelessness fund. I'm not saying that may not be a good idea to make a homelessness fund, but we haven't discussed that as a board. We haven't set the policy. How is this money going to be distributed? What kinds of guidelines are in place for this? Is this property only going to be going towards helping hands? That hasn't. I just don't think this has been thoroughly discussed. It seems to me to be two different things. One is selling the property, and one is if we're going to have a homelessness fund. And so that's my concern, that it hasn't been thoroughly thought out and as how we're going to do it. So I
think that, to me, would be the next step. It, at least from my perspective, didn't seem prudent to spend a lot of time developing guidelines for a program that I didn't know whether we had or not. But if you indicate an interest in moving forward with that, clearly you would have to develop guidelines and policies regarding, what type of projects you would fund and not fund. Clearly, I mean, you'd have to do that, and that would be they would be your policies, and you would determine what types of projects you would fund and not fund, and how you would do that.
Well, that's my concern. I think, in my personal opinion, we design the policy first, and then go look for money for it. And it's not that I'm against supporting the homeless. I attended the Helping Hands fundraiser on Sunday. I worked directly with the homeless population when I managed a building in Portland. That's not what this issue is about. This issue is about setting policy. And so that's my concern.
I think we've given some direction, in fact, quite a bit, to the county manager through our different meetings about the homelessness problem. And what I see is that the county manager and staff have worked to help us begin setting up this fund and policies that will benefit our community. I don't know.
Do we have something written?
I don't think we have to have everything perfect in order to do something good. And I think this is good.
Well, I'm not asking for something perfect. I'm just asking for something written out and discussed thoroughly. But that's just my opinion. So that's how I'm going to go with it.
No, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And if you decide this is something you want to go forward with, I would get to work on those policies and bring them back to you at the soonest opportunity, and we can get back on the agenda for one of the upcoming meetings. So,
But I would make a motion to have some policy written out and developed before we vote on this. Any second?
I'll second it for purposes of discussion. We talked about the urgency of this, and, you know, I don't know how we calibrate urgency for an essential human need. I'm really in favor of a collaborative, community-based input gathering, data-rich policy formulation. I like that every single time on every single issue. So I'm generally for that. This is a project that's going forward. We have some money that we hadn't otherwise anticipated receiving revenue from. So I see the issue about needing policy, and I'm for having policies, and it's an unexpected bit of money, and it's an urgent need, so there we are.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Could you restate your motion, please?
I make a motion that we have a discussion to establish a policy of a homelessness fund, to make it clear what exactly, where this money comes from, where is it going, how is it distributed.
So the motion is have a discussion to establish a homelessness policy.
But that's not instead of this motion.
We can, we'll see if this motion carries, and if this motion doesn't carry, then we'll just make another motion.
Oh.
So we have a
okay.
motion to second on the table. All those in favor to have a discussion to establish a homeless policy? Aye?
Aye.
I'm not voting aye. I'm just, all those in
was.
favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion fails.
I move that the 14.46 acre parcel be offered for sale at a public auction, and that the proceeds be used to establish a homelessness fund to be used to support community efforts to reduce homelessness.
Second.
We have a motion to second to move that the 14.46 acre parcel be offered for sale at public auction, and that the proceeds be used to establish a homelessness fund to be used to support community efforts to reduce homelessness. Is there any further deliberations?
I have a question. It's been stated several times, the example of Helping Hands. Is there an expectation that the money from this will be going to Helping Hands?
No, just an example.
I simply provided that as an example because it was a current project underway that I was aware of. There might be other projects. That's why I think it's important that you do have some criteria to determine, which projects you would or wouldn't fund and how that process works. I would presume, much like our discussion yesterday about the contributions to outside agencies, that we would have an application procedure. There would be criteria that would be met. There would be a review of any applications. And ultimately, you as commissioners would make the decisions about which projects you may or may not fund, consistent with whatever criteria you establish.
Yeah, it's very clear in the agenda item summary that this is an example, Helping Hands is an example as a required, and where something this is an example of this where the project. But as Cam said, once we create it, then we can build the policy around it.
So I'm sorry, I have another question, Chair. So does that mean that if we pass this motion, that the homelessness fund has been established by this motion? Is that your understanding?
That is part of the motion.
That is part of the motion.
Okay, so we're establishing a fund that hasn't been defined yet. Just making that clear.
We have a motion second on the table. Is there any further deliberations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Or nay? Nice nay.
Thank you. Motion carries 4-1. Thank you. May I have the commissioner's report, please? Commissioner Thompson.
I'm going to pass this time.
Commissioner Sullivan, and I would again like to acknowledge the mistake I made at the last meeting, that it wasn't intentional, that since you had passed on your statement that I didn't circle around, and I apologize for that. Can I have your report, please?
Thank you for that, Chair Lee. Last month, I went to an FTLAC meeting. I went to the Board of Commissioner meeting. I went to the Northwest Senior by telephone, the Northwest Senior Disability Services board meeting. What was discussed at the, one of the things that was discussed at the Board of Forestry was the fire season, the upcoming fire season, and how expensive the catastrophic fire season was last year, and they are not real optimistic that it's going to be any better this year. It's been a real strain on the budgets. And I just got I think the rest of you did too, also get the report on the water, particularly in the eastern part of the state. We are looking at some very serious dry conditions. It's already in May. So that's kind of sad to think about. I am not sure of when that we are going to discuss recent events, but I would like to say that this is a 5-member board, and we're elected to do the public's business in public. And it's important that information is shared between all 5 commissioners and that decisions are made by the full board. And we may not always agree, but we must be committed to doing the work that we were elected to do. This commission is the public face of the county. Businesses look to move here, read the paper. Professionals looking to move here, read the paper. And one-sided claims of conflict don't benefit the county and aren't fair to those named. It is past time for us to resolve our conflicts, and we need to solve this problem. And that's why I've asked for an executive session, so that we can speak.
Is that your report? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Nebeker?
Yes. So our budget hearings were long but important. And I wasn't going to bring this up, but based on what the sheriff said, I feel encouraged to vocalize something. An old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I had asked for the amount of money that was granted to the Human Service Advisory Council to grant monies for outside agencies so they could leverage that money to gain other grants. And these programs, a lot of them are for prevention, especially with children. Prior to the downturn in the economy, it was at $30,000. Then it went to $7,500. Over the last year or two, it's gone back up to, well, it's gone up to $15,000. And I would really like to see it restored to $30,000. I know there were different opinions about this, but even the sheriff sees this. Now, I just went through quickly adding up some of the things that Monica gave us in numbers, and thank you for asking for these numbers. It's very helpful. Approximately $5.5 million are spent with corrections and the sheriff's department. That isn't including the DA or his office. I think bringing this back up to where it was prior to the downturn would go a ways towards alleviating some of these costs. Maybe not significant, but when you add in the quality of life for these children, for their families, I think that we should do an interfund transfer. And I would really appreciate support from the board to do this.
May I speak?
Please.
I believe the sheriff was speaking about lunch buddies.
Yeah, that's
and
one of
is this part, and that was a particular program that reduced the amount of people going to the jail, or potentially.
That's his opinion.
So
It's
perhaps
mine.
if we were to fund this a little bit more hefty, that would reduce the 5.5 million going towards, perhaps.
Perhaps.
So how much was funded?
15. Prior to the downturn, it was 30,000. Now it's at 15. I would propose
Let it go up back to 30.
go back to 30.
You weren't at the meeting.
Yeah.
But Sarah, in a conversation, she goes, Scott, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
I agree.
And I truly believe that. My grandma used to say that. And, it's true. And so, yes, I think that we can revisit this, and, I think I'll definitely talk to the county manager and see if we can't work this.
Good, thank you.
And I would like to make a comment, if I may. This is, again, something that I don't mind us, all 5 of us, discussing. I'm certainly open to discussion about it. Yesterday, for me, it was too abrupt for me to make the decision at that time. I'd be certainly happy for us to talk about it another time. I'm open to it.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have the opportunity to revisit that issue when the budget comes before you for adoption. I mean, you can talk about it, but that's when you'll have the opportunity to vote about making a change on the budget.
When is that?
The budget hearings are the second, for the first meeting in June, and the budget adoption are the second meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. I've got everybody's this time. Okay, I would like to give my report. Couple things. I've been chair of the Oregon Coastal Zone Management Association for 2 years, and my term limit is coming up, and on my second term is coming to an end. They're going to nominate a new position in June for a new chair, and I will serve on this committee till the end of the year. And so I just kind of want to plant a seed to members of the board or potential future members of the board that it's a great organization, works with all the coastal counties, and I've really enjoyed serving. It's an organization in transition, association in transition, and I think the value is that really allows a good communication, and we can unite and work towards our common goals. And so if any of the other commissioners are interested, any of this, or commissioners will be serving onward that are currently sitting, I would be more than happy to resign my position in June, allow another commissioner to take over, and then they can be a part of the election of the new board member as a liaison for Clatsop County. Other than that, I'm more than happy to serve till the end of the year. So if you would like to serve on that board, just get in touch with me.
Where do they meet and
They
how
typically
often?
meet like once or twice a year in Newport, right in the middle of the state. And it's basically, the chair's position is a little more, but it's 2 meetings a year plus an AOC meeting. It's not a big commitment.
Okay.
Yeah, so if just give me a note if you'd be interested in that. The second item I have is the Northwest Oregon Housing Authority. We had the meeting last week. Lots of good things going on there. It looks like HUD funding for Section 8 vouchers is going to hold through the federal legislation coming up, I hope. And so we're all kind of hoping that works out. A number of really good projects. The final piece of the puzzle to have CCHA to sign the piece of paper to make that go away. We're just kind of working through the Owens Adair building. We've got a few more things to work through that building, and then once we get that, we'll bring the final paperwork to the board. Other than that, it's pretty much a done deal, and it's really increased the capacity of the organization. And over in the last year, we've really been moving on building our capacity. We've purchased a number of properties, a couple in Tillamook, and a couple in Columbia County. And so we're growing the organization. And again, I would encourage the incoming elected and members of this board, as I will be, my term will expire with no ads. My term expires here at the end of the year. So if you're interested in serving on that board, definitely start thinking about that, because it's just a really great organization to be a part of. And it's in the last 6 years that I've been on it, it's just it's been a great experience and a great learning experience. Other than that, I do not have anything else. Could I have the county manager's report, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Commissioner Sullivan noted, it's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of weeks. One of the things that people in my position really try to avoid is actually being in the media, and for most of my 40-year career, I've managed to do that. But I also think it's important to look back at the choices that the voters of Clatsop County have made. And for those of you, I think this is probably why people hate the world of government, but these are all the rules about how Clatsop County government operates. These rules indicate the roles of the county commissioners. They also indicate expectations of the county manager and the limits of authority of the county manager and commissioners. And I think it's important in light of the recent discussion, which has been more public recently, but it's been a long discussion, probably for a year and a half or so. I just thought it was important to review some of these rules. So I just want to take a few minutes. I'm not going to read through all these things because we would be here for hours and hours. But the first thing I wanted to mention is the county charter. County charter was adopted by the voters in 1989 originally. It was long before I'd ever heard of Clatsop County. So what does the county charter say about the role of the county manager? And let me just stop and say for a second that when I was on a plane in January of 2016, flying out here to interview for this position, one of the ways I prepared for my interview here was to read the county charter. And so many times since I've been here, I've looked back and said, what a waste of time that seemed to be. But I think there are some things in the charter that are really important. And one of them is that the county will have a county manager. The commissioners do not have a choice to not have one under the county charter. And the county charter, I think, is pretty clear about what the role of the county manager is. And again, I'm not going to read all of this, but the county manager shall be the head of the administrative branch of county government. The county manager shall be responsible for carrying out the policies established by the board. The county manager shall be responsible for the employment and termination of all county employees for all departments of the county. And I actually thought this was kind of interesting. Again, I'm a government geek, so I've spent my life studying and working in government, and I don't know that I've seen this in a charter document before. But under the Clatsop County Home Rule Charter, if a vacancy occurs in the office of the county manager, the board shall immediately initiate proceedings to appoint a successor. What that indicates to me is that the voters here made a clear statement that we're more comfortable with professional management as opposed to commissioners managing day-to-day operations. And they don't want that position to be vacant any longer than it needs to be. There's a lot of other stuff here. So that was charter. Talk about the county code. The county charter says you have a county manager. As you all know, you've all read the numbers in the paper, county managers come and go, a lot more frequently here than other places, but they do come and go. So when people like me come into a job like this, how do we know, what authority we have, what we're expected to do, what we can do, and what we can't do? Well, we have these great documents called county codes, and these are the rules, not that we choose to follow. These are the rules we must follow. And again, a couple of sections of the county code that I think are important. Again, reinforcing the charter. In accordance with the provisions of the Clatsop County Charter, the county manager shall be the head of the administrative branch of government and shall be responsible for the proper administration of all affairs of Clatsop County and for carrying out the policies established by the commissioners. It's also noted in county code that, and I found this language interesting because this was a few years ago, I think it was 2015, the last time this was updated, but this is directly from the county code. The Board of County Commissioners recognizes that the management of the county and the administration of the personnel affairs of the county are administrative matters, are not legislative functions, and for that reason, and also because they are complex and constantly changing state and federal regulations affecting county employees, it would be unwise, inefficient, and impractical to attempt to incorporate the details of the personnel policies into an ordinance. The Board of County Commissioners thus expressly authorizes and directs the county manager to adopt personnel policies by administration. There's a lot of other stuff here in the code, and in some cases, these responsibilities or lines of authority are not always clear. But as a county manager, I have the opportunity to consult with county council when I need to about the limits of my authority, and I don't want to put county council on the spot, but I would like to ask her, I believe on a number of occasions I've come to you and asked for your advice about the limits of my authority under the county charter. I mean, is that correct?
That is.
And I've also asked you, have you ever at any time seen me as the county manager exceed my authority under the county code as county manager? Is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
So these are the rules I'm following. And these are the rules that were in place and provided to me when I came here. These are not my rules. These are the rules set down by the voters of Clatsop County and by the county commissioners through their code. But wait, there's more. We have a lot more rules in government. These are county board rules that are put in place. And one of the county board rules, there are a number of them. This is the section on governing style. It says that the board will govern lawfully with an emphasis on outward vision rather than internal preoccupation. They will provide strategic leadership more than administrative detail, and they will make sure that there's a clear distinction of board and county manager roles. Frankly, I think it's one of the problems we have is that distinction gets blurred. In addition to that, again, county board rule, the board commits itself, its members, to ethical, businesslike, and lawful conduct, including the proper use of authority and appropriate decorum when acting as board members. But wait, there's more. The board's sole official connection to the operational organization, its achievement, and conduct will be through a county manager, as provided for in the county home rule charter. These rules also talk about the county manager's role, and this particular next couple of rules apply to the county manager. The county manager shall not cause or allow any organizational practice, activity, decision, or circumstance that is either unlawful, imprudent, or in violation of commonly accepted business and professional ethics and practices. That responsibility belongs to the county manager under the rules established by the Board of County Commissioners. It also says for the county manager that with respect to the treatment of paid and volunteer staff, the county manager shall not cause or allow conditions that are unfair, undignified, disorganized, or unclear. And the last one I want to read, which again I think is particularly relevant given the discussion that we've had here for quite some time. This is a rule that governs the conduct of board members at board meetings. Board members will, when addressing staff, confine themselves to questions or issues that are under discussion. They will not engage in personal attacks. They will not impugn the motives of any speaker. And they will at all times, while in session or otherwise, conduct themselves in a manner appropriate to the dignity of the office. Board members will not attack the knowledge, skills, abilities, and personalities or impugn county staff members' motives in board or at county meetings. So I thought it was important to read these tonight because, I frankly feel like I get a great deal of criticism for doing the job I was hired to do and following the rules I was given to do that job. And secondly, I feel that there are aspects of this code that I am required as county manager, I just read them to you, to enforce those things. And I think, as Commissioner Sullivan said, I think if we can get back on the same page and understand that there are rules that apply to the county manager, there are also rules that apply to board members. And I think if we both take the time to understand those and comply with those rules consistently, I think we'll all be a lot better off. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, County Manager. One more item. Commissioner Sullivan has requested a executive session to review and evaluate the employment-related performance of the Chief Executive Officer. So if she would like to initiate an executive session, you'll have to make a motion.
Thank you. Yes, I make a motion for an executive session so that we may discuss the matters that are before us.
I'll second the motion for purposes of discussion.
So I don't think there's anything to review here to evaluate the employment-related performance of the Chief Executive Officer at this time.
My motion is that we meet so that we can discuss
The
what.
purpose of an executive session, Commissioner Sullivan, is to review and evaluate the employment-related performance of the Chief Executive Officer of any public body, a public officer, employee, or staff member who does not request an open hearing.
Okay, then that's my motion then.
So is there any further deliberations? We have a motion, a second, to adjourn the meeting and move into the executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
Aye. Nay. Nay.
Thank you.
I didn't hear your vote, Commissioner Thompson.
Nay.
Okay. Motion fails 4-1. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.